Hi everyone. Please don't mind me. I know my hair's still soaking wet. I washed it like an hour and a half ago, and it's so thick it stays wet. But this is the only chance I had, and I wasn't going to do a video today. But some things I just want to talk about, and this is actually going to be a two-parter that I'm going to finish this weekend. But so I had to come with my wet hair. I don't. Color, or I don't do anything chemical to it, and I don't even use a hair dryer anymore. I don't have split ends. I have really healthy, thick hair, but I, for decades haven't done anything to it, so I just like let it be, let it air dry, and so you guys are kind of stuck with me looking like a drowned rat. Sorry about that. I know already have some issues. Okay, so oftentimes when I have to, due to trauma, I've had multiple trauma in my life, and I've talked about some of them in some of my videos, but due to trauma, I have to hear noise in the background, and to help me sleep, and I wake up when the TV goes off, and there's no, just for some reason, it's just something that helps soothe me to sleep. I have cheated death many, many, many times. And not in abusive situations. I was thrown from a car when I was 17. I miss being struck by lightning by like like teeny little bit when I was like a toddler. I even remember it. I've been held up at gunpoint, and those people, murdered people in, Norfolk, Virginia, back in the 90s. So there's some trauma that I've had. I haven't explained that at all, and I'm not going to get into some worse stuff that's happened to me. Um, but it's just my way of coping. I have a couple ways of like coping through the trauma, and I do pretty well. Um, and therapy really helps with that. I'm not in therapy currently, but I have been. And also dealing with my children who had issues. But anyways, back to, so when I wake up, YouTube's usually going. I usually wake up a little bit before my husband's alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, and so sometimes I wake up to the YouTube channel Crime Weekly, I think it's called. Let me see. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, Crime Weekly. And sometimes it's 48 hours, and sometimes it's this other, like political or history professor or something like that, who I never even heard of. I don't even know why she shows up on my screen. But lately, for months, it's been Crime Weekly, and I do watch them from time to time. So basically, I am going to talk about some things that they discussed today. So I'm basically going to use the Fair Use Act, which means I can talk about even copyrighted material if I'm going to use it for criticism, comments, commentary, teaching, or entertainment, or something like that. So, but I do want to talk about this because I know I've gone over a lot of what they were talking about today. Like I said, I'm going to do this a two-parter because I got to make this one maybe like a half an hour because I still have to like upload it, do a thumbnail, which I'm kind of learning still, and tags and everything like that, and post it. And it usually takes a little while. So I have to take, like I said, I have a disabled son who lives with me. I have to take him somewhere. I do, take him for some medical things and other things. He doesn't leave the house often at all. Generally, it's for medical issues. Um, and then I gotta run home and then kind of finish getting ready. My husband and I are gonna do date night tonight. We've picked a new Italian restaurant about 40 minutes away from us that we want to try. We found a really great one that's not that far from us in Stevens City. That was really great. We were really happy with it, but we want to try something a little bit closer. Okay, so basically, um, so when I woke up, Crime Weekly was like halfway maybe into their episode, and their episodes are pretty long. They're usually 2 hours, and they talk about it. Um, the two hosts talk about, crime cases. And this one I woke up to was about a lawyer who wrote a book, and she's also a former judge, and she's going, I think, to sue, but I missed some of it. I only had time to go through like the first half of the episode where they were starting to mention her and everything she's going to do. So I'm going to watch the rest of it and do a second part on it. But I just kind of wanted to talk about some things because there's a lot of similarities to what happened to Harmony Montgomery. And I think I got her name right. Um, and so I just kind of want to talk about that. Um, so yeah, so they've broken down the case in multiple parts on how, and they've done other people like Gypsy Rose and stuff like that. Like a lot of the big known, especially televised cases. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Harmony Montgomery, is she's assumed to be murdered by her biological father, who had uh, temporary custody. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if it's temporary custody or not. I either don't remember or I'm not positive. But he ended up, and as far as I know, her body has never been located, which is super sad. Um, but the father was arrested originally for second degree assault, interference with custody, and endangerment, welfare of a child. And then later that was upgraded to murder. I don't know what was the difference if her body wasn't found, how it was upgraded to murder. Maybe it was his uh, wife flipped on him or something. I don't know. But I don't remember her name, Tiffany or something like that. She continued receiving Harmony's benefits for a while. So she was charged with a felony because she took over $1,500. So she knew the girl was missing, wasn't there. The story um, was that she was living with the mother who had lost custody. But still, you don't have custody of that child, whether she's alive or not. You cannot keep taking benefits in for a child that you're not physically raising. And I don't know what the benefits were. I can only assume that she was deemed special needs because a lot of children are deemed special needs. It gets more federal funding. She very well could have been special needs, and there are a lot of children that are special needs in the system. Some have trauma from their life with their parents, and some have trauma from foster care. Some have trauma from being removed from their parents and into foster care. I mean, there's just a lot of trauma that goes on in children's lives and situations, which is really why DCF needs to do better in their jobs. And they need to stop hiring people who, at best, have a high school diploma. What does high school teach you in the psychology of a child? It doesn't. It does not. You need to have a master's degree to know what you're doing and the best thing for that child. I mean, and even some guardian ad litems have no. I think a lot of people are in the assumption that a guardian ad litem is an attorney for the child, and not every instance. And there's also CASAs, um, advocates for children who also have zero psychological knowledge or legal knowledge. They're just like chirping in their little 3 cents worth or 2 cents worth. I'm going to say 3 cents worth because of inflation. How's that? um, Okay, so after this happened, Governor Sununu, had to come out because that's what they do. Governors have to look like, oh, I don't know this shit's going down, so let's get an investigation done. And it's always the same same song and dance. Let's investigate. Let's find the problems out. Let's list the same fucking problems every time. And pretend we're going to do something, but we really aren't. Okay, so he requested an investigation into DCYF, which I believe is what it's called in New Hampshire, and immediately review. So he wanted an immediate review on how it handled the case of Harmony. So, if those of you who don't know, she was in Massachusetts, taken from her mother. I think in and out of foster care continuously, and eventually, I think the judge just said, "Fuck it, just give it to her father." You know what I mean? Probably just like, I'm done. Make it New Hampshire's problem. This is a Massachusetts judge. Probably just let's just make it a Massachusetts problem. I don't feel like dealing with it today because it's a judge, right? Judges have total immunity, and even the people on Crime Weekly, the host was saying it's a step down from God. No, actually, I think it is the same as God. When you have there's no recourse for the horrible decisions you make, when you say, and I'll guarantee you, these judges out here barely even crack open the case to read it. It's just, what do you have to say, DCF? What do you have to say? You paid for attorney for the state, for the client, because clients can't afford their own private attorneys. These are mostly poor or, lower middle class families that they rip the kids from. Just like Georgia Tan did. Georgia Tan sought out poor people, promised them shit, killed children, buried them when she couldn't adopt out, just killed them, let them just starve to death, and put them in the... This is no different than Georgia Tan. No different. And if you don't know Georgia Tan, one day I'll do a video on Georgia Tan, because that woman was fucked in the head. All right, so Sununu blasted the Massachusetts judge for not doing a home study, as it most likely would have found him unfit. And that's very true, because he was an unfit piece of shit. But you can't just blame the judge because she ended up being murdered in your state. So the fucking same day that she was transferred there, you all, DCF, could have said, nope, we ain't having this shit. We ain't letting this piece of shit raise this child. We are removing her. She's now our ward. They could have done that. They could have done that. But as I've said before, governors are the top of the pyramid of the DCF conspiracy scheme to defraud our taxpayer money. They're the ones that sit there on their soapbox, elect me or keep me or love me because I'm bringing all this money in, and a lot of this money, billions and billions of dollars, because if it's a multi-hundred billion industry, and that's broken down through 50 states, it's making multiple billions of dollars, okay? Our taxpayers are spending hundreds of billions of dollars for an agency that's supposed to protect children and doesn't give a fuck to, okay? Sorry about the F-bomb. All right, so they remarked on Crime Weekly that nothing can be done to that judge, and that's true. He did not properly vet the father. And if they had, they would have seen what garbage he was. And they believe that judges should be held accountable for judges who rule that lead to a death, 100%. And that's why I want to fight to have immunity taken away. Listen, if it's a run of the course case, and yeah, there's always going to be an unhappy party. And if you're just getting vengeance, well, that can be easily thrown out. But if there is a history of poor judgments from this judge, or there's a history or there's documentation or some proof that that judge was part of a conspiracy, then he should be able to be sued. And listen, these are state judges. These are state judges, state actors, and under the color of law. So who's going to end up paying for the judge? It's not going to come out of the judge. Is not going to open and turn out his pockets and say, okay, here you go. No, the state will pay for it. Because when you sue a state judge, you know who defends them are attorneys from um the uh the Attorney General's office. These are all protected by the state and the state attorneys, and the funds would come from the state. So they need to be sued. So let's fight for that, people. Let's ballot. Let's make it initiatives that we put on a ballot and vote for. But we need to start making these cases more known. And people need to stop with their head in the sand. This is your country. These are your fellow people and their children and your family's children that this is happening to. Because, yeah, some children end up dying. But that isn't always the case. But that doesn't mean a child isn't harmed. That doesn't have to be the only ultimate violation of a child's rights. Because what this judge did was criminal in nature and incompetent. And that's completely accurate. But if you think this is the only judge, or it's few and far between, you're insane. So either go talk to a therapist or go do some research. But we can't stop being a selfish nation, not giving a shit about our children. Because that child that could have been traumatized in foster care and thrown out on the street could murder you trying to jack your car. So let's not make it out it's not my problem. Because it is your problem. It's society. We're part of society. You want to stay in your house and never leave, fine. And not be a part of society, fine. But when you leave that house, you're part of society. You're not private anymore, and your rights merge with everyone else's rights. You have a right to do what you want to do in your house, but once you get out there, your rights aren't as clear and cut. You owe duties to other people, and you owe civil rights to other people. Okay, because the judge, is circumventing policy and procedure. Almost every judge in DCF and a lot of juvenile family courts, they do that very thing. They circumvent policy and procedure, and I will show that in my case because that's exactly what every judge did, was circumvented policy and procedure and precedent. I had so much precedent from the get-go for me. I kept losing out. And as I said, that's just what they all do all the time. But Susu can't alone blame Massachusetts. Hold on one second. I have to go grab a tissue. Hold on. Hi, sorry about that. My nose is getting a little runny. Okay, so, Sununu alone can't blame Massachusetts. As I said earlier, that child was in his state and in the custody. Because his department was involved. And remember, as I always say, that the governors are the top of the pyramid. So, when they act like, I don't know what happened or what could have happened or how this ever could happen, there's a very high chance a child's going to die with DCF. Just some children are lucky. So some children are fighters and survivors. And the New Hampshire worker lied about going to Harmony's house. And you sometimes see that that's often they don't have the time, or they don't want to be bothered, or whatever. Or they think the father is a good guy, and the mother, and they just, I'm not going to do that. But what we need to do is just start making, especially if they lie in their documentation, we need to start charging them too. If a father who buys a gun for a minor child who shoots up a school, then for fuck's sake, a DCF worker who allows a child to be murdered because they know better, should also go to jail. Can I get a amen? Okay, so the report revealed that New Hampshire never did a home study before Mass gave custody, which is, they're supposed to do that. When you transfer custody from a child to anyone, you're supposed to do an ICPC. And in July 2019, New Hampshire DCYF knew Harmony had a black eye and lied about having her seen by medical. So yeah, when a child's in, like, overseen by DCF, if a child gets harmed in a placement, whether the placement's relative or non-relative, they're supposed to have that child medically evaluated. And they didn't, or they lied about having it done. And I actually have had that before, um, where a child was injured and lied about them being seen. And the documentation that was given was physical the child had before the incident happened. And the judge says, okay. And you can say, but wait a minute, that child was injured in care. And they just don't look, they don't care. Because like I said, judge doesn't crack this open. Their clerks do all the work. Their clerks do all the submitting. The clerks do all the typing up the motions and pleadings and shit. He just sits there like a referee. And, okay, what do you have to say, DCF? What do you have to say, attorney for the parents? And the attorney for the parents does the worst possible defense that they can, because they also get paid for the state, and they also do what the state wants. And I'll prove this more in some of my documentations that I show. And then when the child went missing, the father lied and said she was back with the mother. Now remember, this child was removed from the mother in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts judge gave it to the father in New Hampshire. How would that ever become? New Hampshire would actually have to be part of giving that child back to the mother. There's just no, like, here you go. New Hampshire DCYF did not thoroughly investigate this. Like, what the fuck? Why not? Because like I said, the mother had the child moved from her. You just don't take that. And what the Crime Weekly host said, you know, while the DCF workers sitting on the can for 20 minutes playing Candy Crush, you could have called the police and said, hey, can you just verify this child's here, because she's not here where she's supposed to be? This is why we can't just hire some schmuck off the road to be DCF because we're desperate. Children deserve better. Children have rights. Believe it or not. Your rights don't become active when you turn 18. Your rights come active the moment you take your first breath when you're born. Hello? Yeah, so they didn't do that. Okay, let me see if I can finish this up in a couple minutes. So then also the Mass OCA reviewed on May 4th, 2022, and they looked backwards in that. And their answers was multiple actors failed to center Harmony's needs. DCF didn't do proper home check. Court did not have full picture. Court doesn't want to have the full picture. He wants to get in and done. He doesn't really care about these children live or die, because he's not going to be held responsible. They did not adequately access the father. So note, if DCF does not like you, I'm telling you, if DCF doesn't like you, they fucking hate me. Because I'm not an idiot. They will go against your wishes. Even if you say they're in danger there. So, such as the mother. Mother didn't want the father, her child going with the father. She knew he was dangerous and unsafe. And she probably did mention, she probably screamed from the rafters that he went to jail for attempted murder. But see, you say don't send him, and DCF says, well, we fucking don't like you, so we're going to put him where you don't want him. Why? Because we're not going to get charged with murder. He will. What do we care? They did not do a home study. Gail did not do a background check to show father was in jail for attempted murder, or they did and kept that info out due to a conspiracy. Which I tell you, all of these agencies, it's a conspiracy. Every single case is a conspiracy. And they are allowed to do it because it's all sealed. And they had mentioned on the Crime Weekly that once a child's dead, that the case should be immediately opened. And I agree with that because there's no privacy anymore. Redact, like, if there's other children names mentioned. And I also mentioned, like, when a child was murdered in the trial for that woman that murdered her in Hawaii, they sure as shit, the Supreme Court said, yes, we can open this up. So what other people need to do is take that. It's not a precedent for that state, but it's persuasive. And you can say, look, this state says, yeah, after a kid's dead, we can go and backtrack. But DCF wants to cover up everything they did. And that's why states also, because it's their actors, it's their employees, and that is why they'll hide it. We need to wake up and start holding our judiciary and our governments responsible. But see, that's why they tend to take a lot of children away from poor families, because poor families may not have the knowledge enough of what they can do. It took me years. To really know everything in and out. And there's even a lot of stuff I don't know. They didn't drug test the father. And if you all know me, you know that for 9 consecutive months, DCF drug tested me, knowing I wasn't a drug addict, because they weren't going to give the kids to me. They weren't even going to let me have visitation. And I'm almost positive that they don't make the foster parents do drug testing on a regular basis or psychological testing or anything like that. Okay, so they also mentioned this Carol Erskine, who was a retired Mass juvenile court judge and longtime child welfare advocate. And I'm going to talk about her and what she had to say. And I think she wrote a book. I'm just going to touch it, but my second one's going to be more about her, what she has to say. And she wants to put the blame everywhere it exists, 100% that it's what she's doing. And I'm going to just say a small percent of the advocates. I mean, no, not a small percent of the advocates. It's a small percent of the community that are advocates. Not enough. This is just not enough. That's why I am going to law school in my 50s. I finished my degree in May, and then I'm going to go to law school. And I know it's crazy that the majority of law schools says you don't need pre-law to go into law school. I don't know. Personally, I think it would help because I already know a lot of laws and terminology. That's got me a fresh start when I start law school. So she also said that Harmony was made vulnerable by a catastrophic failure, which made Harmony expendable. Every single one of the children that go in DCF are expendable, lady. And I know that they said that she was a judge that had adopted out Harmony's siblings. She was an actual judge that did this, so this is of concern to her. But I would tend to wonder, were all of her cases on the up and up? I'm just curious. Because there are some, very few and far between, good judges in there that really care about the children and really want to do the right thing and don't take DCF's bull. Or did she make some poor decisions? Because even if a children lives in foster care or adoption, and if they walk out at the age of 18, it doesn't mean that they were unscathed. And that's what people have to understand. Because you may not die up until the age of 18, but you can be suicidal and harm yourself 5 years later because of what happened. What if you were raped as a child for many, many years. That is gonna F you up. Um, and she even says it's secretive because it's in juvenile court, but also a way for everyone from the judge down to be a part of the conspiracy is what I'm saying actually. So I'm gonna go over this episode some more. I'm gonna look into this what was her name? Carol Erskine. Because I tend to wonder, like, was she really one of those judges that were on the up and up? Or is she just now kind of feeling like, in hindsight, yeah, we screwed up pretty bad. All right, we're about at a half an hour here. Um, I will do a part two about this, but I got to get this loaded because I got to leave here in a few minutes. All right, I will see you all later. Have a great weekend. Bye.